Fantastic. So good morning, everybody. A source of inspiration, my children yesterday are a source of frustration as well sometimes, and they've got their exams and tests and everything going on at the moment, which yeah, certainly can be a challenging time. I recognise that for everybody. So how are you feeling? Let's talk a little bit about leadership before I share some views with you around vocational education and the massively important part it plays across the Greenshaw Learning Trust. I'm blessed and privileged to lead what will be 20 schools in January. It's currently 17 schools. We're excited to be setting up a cluster in Plymouth, and really looking forward to that. And of those, a dozen of those are secondary schools, and a large number of those benefit from vocational education. But before we get on to that, how are you feeling? That's a pretty negative slide, isn't it? Discouraged, disbelieving, daunted, disempowered, disorganised. I don't know about you, but I certainly feel like that some of the time. Hopefully not all of the time. I talk about to the leaders in my organisation about whether they're surviving or thriving at the moment, and given the challenges that we've all got, keeping our schools open, supporting children, supporting our staff with the pandemic that has taken grip of the world, it can be a really challenging time as a leader. Or are you one of those leaders who is energized, focused, unfazed, supported and dynamic? I don't know. Certainly I feel that way sometimes, and sometimes I fall firmly in the middle. Certainly taking control of some of the decisions that I take, making sure that I'm focused on the things that I can influence, certainly helps me be further towards the right hand end of those scales. But what I do want to share with you is just 3 things that you might think about doing that perhaps would push you from the left to the right hand side, given the challenges we've got at the moment. And these aren't specifically related to curriculum or indeed more broadly kind of education. The first of those, if you drink coffee, drink good coffee, really good coffee. Actually, it's the same for wine and sausages, I always say. Really drink high quality coffee. Why do I say that? It's a kind of analogy or a metaphor for looking after yourself, making sure that you just take time out to enjoy the small parts of what we do on a day in, day out basis that bring us joy, and just recognizing as leaders that we need that nourishment all of the time in order to be the very best leaders that we are. The second thing is smile as much as possible. Apparently endorphins are chemically similar to heroin. I've never taken heroin, I'm glad to say, but I have spent a lot of time smiling. And by smiling, what you're doing, and this is a bit of, again, an analogy or a metaphor in terms of your relationship with other people, you're engaging other people, you're bringing other people into what you do. One of the solutions to the challenges we've got at the moment is to make sure that we're with other people and we're surrounded by other people. And I think that that engagement and that collaboration has been a fundamental positive that has come out of some of the really negative challenges associated with the pandemic that we're in at the moment. People coming together, albeit not face to face, but seeing that as a benefit to the way that we work. And then the final one is just about how you feel about yourselves and trusting yourselves. One of the things I found in being quite isolated is that you begin to question yourself. You begin to think, am I making the right decisions? Is the curriculum in school the right curriculum? Are we supporting teachers in the right way? And of course, it's right to ask ourselves questions, but trust your gut, trust yourself. Someone once said to me, actually it was Sir John, the late Sir John Rowling at Pixel, you probably know more than you think you do, which was wise words. I know it can be quite a debilitating time when we're quite isolated, but just trusting yourself is a really important thing to do. I have a couple of principles upon which I hang everything I do. One of those is I like to make things as simple as possible, not easy, but as simple as possible. I like to reduce complexity. And my observations are, in whatever we do, whether it be the complexity of our curriculum, the complexity of our teaching and learning strategies, the complexity of our leadership, the more we make things complex, the less successful we are. So simplifying things has been a real drive for me. And then the other The other thing is around bringing clarity to the people around you. You might have a brilliant idea to introduce a different element of the curriculum, perhaps be inspired by this webinar this morning to go out and have a look at some of the brilliant vocational qualifications for reasons that I'll highlight in a moment. But what's crucial is that you bring clarity to the people around you. So when I'm sitting in leadership team meetings or I'm sitting in my directors meetings or my board meetings, often I'll have these two graphs up on the board and anybody at any time can say this is overly complex and we are not being clear. So if you want something to drive your leadership decisions, that might be something that could help you. And then the final thing around leadership for me really is around the type of leaders we are at the moment. I've seen, and this is especially the case when it comes to curriculum development, when it comes to teaching and learning development, we as leaders are defaulting to being really, really good, and we all are, I think, very good technical leaders. So we have answers to problems. Here's a problem, I'll give you the answer. I think we're less good at being adaptive leaders, and that is facilitating other people arriving at the conclusions and the solutions to the problems they've got. Not lighting fires underneath people, but lighting fires within people. That's the difference between technical leadership, having all the answers, and there is a place for that, and being adaptive leaders, leaders who are facilitating and growing and nurturing. There's a place for both. I think one of the challenges, and this was what I was asked to talk a little bit about this morning, one of the challenges, given where we are nationally at the moment, is that we are just simply focused on being really good technical leaders, and that is important to the detriment of building capacity around adaptive leadership. I always say what we do creates a possible outcome. How we do it, the emotions associated with how we do it, actually determines the outcome. I think there are probably 4 or 5 things that I see in the very best leaders in the schools and in the trusts that I visit that characterize those leaders. The first is that they make people feel special. They make people feel that they're part of a journey. So if they're looking at curriculum development, if they're looking at introducing a new vocational qualification, if they're looking at using what I think is a brilliant platform in iAchieve, then they make the people that are going to be involved in delivering that feel like they're part of the team, feel like there's a narrative, feel like there's a journey, feel like they are going on a course of actions that are going to lead to a really positive outcome. The best leaders spend time making people feel special. Secondly, the very best leaders don't indulge in moods. It's an interesting one. I suppose we can all be a bit moody. I certainly can be now and again. But actually it's about how people find you as a leader now more than ever. So if I'm feeling challenged or I'm feeling isolated and I want to speak to my line manager, I don't want to have to second guess what kind of mood they're going to be in. I'm looking for a leader who is going to present and be the person that I'm expecting and that I see time in, time out. The third is recognizing the art of the possible rather than expecting the impossible. Often I hear people talking about, can you just improve this or do more or do better? What do those things even mean? Actually talking about what is possible, what tangibly is possible today, what we can do to support, and practically what we can do to move things forward. So if you are looking at developing a more vocational curriculum, what does that tangibly look like? Don't deal in big, broad euphemisms like develop and consider and review. Deal in imperatives. What are we going to do today? What is practically possible to achieve today, to achieve tomorrow, to get us where we want to be? Final 2, live for today, not the next job. People constantly focus on next year, next term, in 2 years' time, in 3 years' time. And I know we need to look forward and we need to kind of reflect on what's going to happen in the future, but don't do that to the detriment of what's taking place today. The very best leaders balance their focus on what's happening today as well as what might be happening in the future. And the final thing is just to recognize that as a leader, it's not all about you. Well, I think it is about you as a leader. It's really important that it's about you, but it's not just about you. It's about the team around you. I'm going to stop the presentation there and just hopefully show hopefully show my face on the screen. I don't know if that's possible to do. Could you stop sharing my screen so people can actually see me now, can they? Fantastic. So you can see I'm in my playroom at home. There's all the children's toys behind me. I haven't quite worked out how to blur the background yet. Vocational education has played a crucial part in the development of the curriculum across the schools in the Greensill Learning Trust, and it's done that for a number of reasons. The first is that we've fully recognised that it isn't easier, and you should listen to the wise words of Maureen DeLonghi. Known Maureen for years and years and years. She is an absolute inspiration and advocate for vocational education, but not because it's easier, but because it is different and it plays to different people's strengths. We talk about it being more accessible to some children, and it's not always the children who are necessarily struggling to access a GCSE. It's for a whole range of different reasons, but we're very clear about why it's a priority for us and why it's a priority to deliver to many of our children, and that's because it's a different way of learning. The second point is that we have seen very clear evidence about there being very strong links to pathways, to the likely future pathways for young people, and that's around high level apprenticeships, higher degree apprenticeships, the way the landscape is changing around higher education. And an element of vocational education enables children to make those links and those pathways into apprenticeships, which I think are going to be a massive part of the future for my children and for many of our children in schools, and as they go on potentially to do degree apprenticeships as well. So there's a really strong technical link there. Thirdly is around assessment structure. It's the assessment structure of many of the vocational qualifications, and I know iAchieve focused very much on the VCerts initially, but those qualifications have a different assessment structure. It's more spread out. I think it's better suited to children and young people, and that leads into the fourth point, that it's motivational. What we've found is that where children are having success in vocational education, what that does in turn is, because of the assessment strategies, it motivates the children across all of their subjects. And what we've got is clear evidence across across many of our schools, and some of them are achieving, if Progress 8 is your thing, many of my schools are at 1.1, 0.8, 0.9, 0.5, 0.4, 0.3. I think they're all positive. That's not because we're just acing bucket 3 and not really worrying about maths and English. That's because the vocational qualifications that are supporting an element of Progress 8 are also having a direct impact, because those children are feeling good about their learning, on their motivation for English and maths and geography and other GCSEs. So there's a symbiosis in the way that vocational education works with GCSEs. So we've used them with enormous success across the range, and I'll just finish by talking a little bit about the link with iAchieve, and Jonathan and Amanda and Alice and the team at iAchieve have just been, I think, have been an inspiration in leading the priority and the focus in this particular area. And we've used iAchieve across a number of our schools, most notably Yate and 5 Acres in Bristol and the Forest of Dean, and it's just been absolutely brilliant. And broadly speaking, I think iAchieve has been great for 2 reasons. One is it's one of those really, really rare things where it just does what it says on the tin. It engages young people to achieve, and I think sometimes organisations wrap themselves up in these complex kind of sets of priorities around what they're doing. iAchieve just helps you deliver with a really, really well thought through, simple, clear platform, effectively deliver vocational education. And then the second reason why we've been why I feel very strongly this is something you should consider, is just the quality of the service you get. And I can honestly say there are just a handful of commercial and semi-commercial organisations that we partner with that I can genuinely say that the quality of the service and the responsiveness of the people who work for them makes it feel more like a charity than anything else. I'm not actually sure what the formal company status of iAchieve is, but it feels very much like they're doing it not because they want your money, but because they want to help, and they want to help you help the children. And that for me aligns with our values, and our ethos as an organisation. So I think that, you know, the two quotes I'll leave you with: the road ahead is under construction. It always is, isn't it? We talk about never being the finished article, and you may be happy with your curriculum, but I think now more than ever, especially with remote learning, is a chance just to reflect on how we might adapt the delivery of some of our curriculum, and iAchieve is the perfect platform to do that, especially if you embed it carefully into your curriculum. And then it's the great Jim Collins, probably one of my favorite authors, who said greatness is not a function of circumstance. Greatness, it turns out, is actually largely a matter of conscious choice and discipline. The challenge of being successful with vocational education, very much like being successful in educational leadership, is actually about deciding what you want to do. Decide to do a vocational qualification with groups of your young people, and then being disciplined to follow it through. And both of those, in our experience, have been enormously supported by the iAchieve platform. So I hope the webinar has been useful. Like Maureen, if anybody wants to talk to me about how we've developed vocational education in any of our schools, visits aren't completely off the table to some of our schools, but we need to be careful how we do those. And also talk to you about my experience of iAchieve, I'd be more than happy to do that. And I hope the rest of the webinar's really helpful. Thank you, Amanda and Alice.